A lot of people in America enjoy the sport of shooting and hunting, but unfortunately, due to the unavailability and extremely high prices of ammunition, people like myself have been forced to reload spent casings into new usable cartridges, not only saving money, but ultimately having something to shoot when we go to the range. Today I'm going to explain the 5 basic parts of a bullet, the step-by-step process a bullet goes through when being fired from a gun, and the basic steps needed to reload a spent casing into a new usable cartridge. Let's start with what makes up a bullet. According to simplyaboutguns.com, there are 5 parts of a bullet: the bullet itself, the casing, the rim, the primer, and the propellant or gunpowder. Here I have a spent casing, and you can see it's a piece of brass and it's shaped a certain way to fit into the chamber of a gun. At the end we have an open hole, and that's ultimately where the bullet will be loaded after we put the propellant or the gunpowder inside of the casing. On the back side of the cartridge we have a groove here called a rim, and the rim is what the extractor on the bolt of the gun grabs onto to extract the empty casing out of the gun. Lastly, we have the primer, that small circle part in the middle. The primer contains a small charge that when hit by the firing pin ignites the propellant through a hole called a flash hole in the casing. The bullet is actually a lot smaller than some people might think. This is what actually leaves the end of the gun at extremely high speeds and under extremely high pressures. And here we have a bullet that's already been reloaded, so that's what it looks like after it's already been done. Now that we understand the parts that make up a bullet, let's talk about the step-by-step process a bullet goes through when being fired out of a gun. When a bullet like this one here is loaded into a gun, the rim is grabbed by the bolt, holding it in place. When the trigger is pulled, numerous parts are set into motion. Ultimately, the firing pin strikes the primer, and like I said before, the charge inside of the primer ignites the propellant, expelling the bullet out of the end of the bore at extremely high speeds. The bullet is under a lot of chamber pressure at the time of powder ignition. According to ballisticstudies.com, a Swiss 7.5 by 5.5 millimeter cartridge like the one shown here has a chamber pressure of 45,500 psi. That's an unimaginable number when it comes to pressures. Especially if you ever filled your car tire up. A car tire usually takes 35 psi, so you can kind of understand how much 45,000 psi actually is. That bullet travels out of the end of the bore at 2,640 feet per second. That's a really high rate of speed. Now that the bullet is fired out of the gun, let's talk about how to reload a spent casing. First, you pick all your brass up when you go to the shooting range so you have something to reload. And you have to buy your bullets from a different store so you can reload them, along with your primers and your powder. There's a few steps involved in reloading a casing. The first thing you have to do is clean the brass so you can reload it, and that involves using a tumbler. It's a little big, and I'll try to get in the camera, but you load all your cases in there. I'll just show you the bowl part. You put your casings in the bowl along with a media, and the media has a polishing agent on it that actually polishes the brass and makes it factory new. Now there's a few different kinds of media. The one I have here is made from dried corn cobs, and it has a polishing agent introduced to the material, and when it's polished for a couple of hours, like I said, it really shines the brass up and cleans it good. There's different kinds of media. There's one made out of walnut shells, and then there's synthetic media, but those have mixed results, so I like to stick with the corn cob. If the walnut one is used and you leave it in too long, you can really damage the brass, so I wouldn't recommend that if you do decide to ever reload. The next step is the primer of the bullet. I'm not going to reload one now, but I have a primer press here, and you squeeze that once the casing is on the end, and it pushes new primer into the casing. The next step would be to refer to your reloading manual, and this will give you your operating limits as far as how much and what kind of powder to put into a case before you load the bullet in. Like I said, at 45,500 psi, if you put too much powder, your pressures are obviously going to go up and you can really hurt yourself or the people around you. So safety and knowledge is definitely the key in reloading ammo. but it's all in the book, so if you ever do reload, just refer to your manual. After you have your powder and your primer into the casing, the next step is to load the actual bullet into the casing. I'll hold it up here. It's kind of hard to see, but this is the press here, and one depression of the lever will press a new bullet into the casing. There's different kinds of propellant. The one I have here is it's a stick gunpowder. It looks like little tree stumps almost. The reason it's in a bag is because I dumped about a cup full of it onto my keyboard, and I'll be picking it out of my keyboard for the next 6 months. Well, now that you have a bullet loaded and it's successfully pressed into the casing and your measurements are correct, all you have left to do is go shoot. Well, now that we know what it takes to reload a casing, let's cover what we talked about today. Today we talked about the basic parts of a bullet, the step-by-step process a bullet goes through when it's fired from a gun, and we brushed on what it takes to reload a bullet. Hopefully what we talked about today helps you understand a little bit more about how complex something as little as a bullet can actually be, and how much work goes into reloading it, and how much money goes into reloading it also. And if you do like to go shooting or hunting, hopefully you can pick up reloading and have fun with it. Thank you.